Hey, what's going on everyone? Is Romeo and in this video, I wanted to walk through my actual early morning Spanish active studying routine. And the reason why I want to share this is because many people start learning a language and eventually they get stuck. They're asking themselves, what's next? Um, but my theory is that you have to always find something to actively study and keep going with it and just keep going until you get very proficient at that one thing that you are studying and then move on and find something else. So for me right now, almost 2 years in, my morning routine for my active studying consists of the following workflow. So everything for me at least starts with a spreadsheet. So here's my current spreadsheet, which tracks my current studying in the book Complete Spanish Step by Step, which is a book that I recommend. And so, as you can see on this spreadsheet, I actually started this series of or this current process through this book on August 20th. And I bring this up because actually this is my third time through this book this year. The first time I went through the book was in March. The first time this year I went through the book is in March. The second time I went through the book was in May. And now I'm finally finishing up the last time I'm going through the book. Again, this is based on what I've said, like go through whatever resource that you have and do it into mastery. But anyway, as you can see on the spreadsheet, I actually have several columns, and I'm going to walk through what I mean and why I have these columns right now. So currently, I'm finishing up chapter 24, and I have 6 more chapters until I'm done with this book. And then next year, I'm going to move on to something else because I finally mastered all the concepts in this book. Anyway, so here's the spreadsheet. Everything starts with my spreadsheet so that I can track what I'm doing and to make sure that I don't go too long without actually not studying Spanish. And so this spreadsheet keeps me accountable. So it starts with the spreadsheet. So if I know that I'm studying chapter 24 today, and it will be the first time through for chapter 24, what I like to do is I like to go to the book. I have the electronic version of the book, and I'll go to chapter 24 and I will refresh the lesson. So in this case, I'm studying the past perfect. So I will read through the lesson. Once I get to these examples, I try not to focus on the Spanish version at this point because I'm 3 times in, and I go through the examples that's in English, and then in my head I actually say what the Spanish translation of the English is. So in this case, I know I'm studying the past perfect, so I will go through and I'll say, okay, había vuelto without looking at the Spanish version, and then for the English version of this, tú habías empezado without actually looking at the Spanish version. And so I will go through the book. Once I get to the exercises, the next thing I do is I actually write the English translation of the exercise. So in this case, it's not a good example because it's exercise 24.1 is already in English. But if you go to exercise 24.2, where this book says to translate the following sentences into English, and it gives the Spanish version, what I do with my Google Sheet or a notebook, if that's what you have, is I read the Spanish version of the exercise. El profesor sabía que yo había estudiado. And in another sheet, I translate that and I put it in English, and you'll see why in a second. So if the Spanish was el profesor sabía que yo había estudiado, I know that means that the professor knew that I had studied. And that's what I do for the entire chapter. So, and of course, you could break this down however you want, but I try to finish out a chapter a day, depending on the length of the chapter. So I did this for the entire chapter, and that's even including the reading exercises in this book. So if you go to the reading exercises portion, there's this entire reading exercise here, and I do the same thing. I convert the reading exercise into English, and I write it on my Google Sheet. Now, that's what I do for the entire day one, which in this case took me about an hour to finish out the entire chapter. So that's the first day of chapter 24. The next day, which is a separate day, but still in my active study workflow, I go through this entire document that I created in English, and now before I leave this chapter, I convert this entire chapter back into Spanish. But I don't just convert it into Spanish by writing it. That's when I bring in my next piece, which is my speaking practice. What I use for my speaking practice and what I found that best worked for me is this tool on SpanishDictionary.com. Now, this is a premium version of SpanishDictionary.com, but what it has is it has this premium voice translation. It's not perfect, but it works. So what I want to show you is, again, the workflow. So what I would do is, let's try to bring this up side by side. What I would do is I would take chapter 24, for example. It's in English here. And so I'm going to practice translating my English into Spanish, the entire chapter that I already put in English. So, for example, the children thought their parents had left. So I will go into my translation and I would make sure it's go from Spanish to English, and I would say that sentence. So let's go ahead and just show you an example of that. Los niños pensaron que sus padres habían salido.
The children thought their parents had come out.
See, I said it's not perfect. Habían salido is one way, but let's try again. Los niños pensaron que sus padres habían ido.
The children thought their parents had gone.
Well, that's not working out. Let's try number 2. But anyway, so it's not perfect, but it kind of works out as long as you understand the concept. Let's go with number 2. I had already set the table when my family arrived. Ya había puesto la mesa cuando mi familia llegaron.
I had already set the table when my family arrived.
Boom. And last one, let's say number 3, Roberto went to a country that he had never visited before. Roberto fue a un país que él nunca había estado antes.
Roberto went to a country that he had never been to before.
Actually, I just looked at that and it says Roberto went to a country that he had never visited before. But anyway, so that's the concept. That's actually the workflow. I make sure I have a Spanish studies tracker sheet to make sure that I know what I'm doing today and tomorrow. So in this case, tomorrow I'll be doing the future tense, chapter 25. I just broke down this book that I use every day. Once I know that I'm doing the future tense tomorrow, I will go through the chapter that covers the future tense. So in this case, I will read through the chapter. As I'm reading through the chapter, I will read the English examples. In my head, I will translate those English examples to Spanish to make sure I'm understanding the concept. The next thing I would do is I would take the exercises that's in this chapter and I will write out those exercises in its own document. Again, you can use a notebook for that. Once this document is completely finished for chapter 25, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the English version that I created of that chapter. And I'm going to take that version and I'm going to go into the Spanish translation tool that's on SpanishDictionary.com, which is the premium version. And I'm going to convert that English version into Spanish to understand, to make sure that I am pronouncing things correctly and to make sure that I have the concepts in total. And so this is my current workflow for my third time through the book. If it was my first time, it would be a little bit different, but this example is good for someone who has been studying Spanish for a while and they just want to know how to keep going and stay motivated. You can take this idea and use it for anything. You can use it for a book that you find. You can use it for a television series that you're watching on Netflix. You could do a lot with this. So anyway, I thought about it and I figured I'll share just in case you needed an idea of how to keep going. So until the next video, peace.